Hello, good morning. We'll get started here in just a minute. Just taking a second, settle in. Enjoying the quality of light. It's going to change again as we move to the other side of the solstice. I had quite a few people tell me that they were traveling and so doing the sunrise practice at a different time today. So it may just be what's happening right now. Oh, no, here we go. Good morning, good morning. We will get started in just a minute. We might have a very small group today on the live portion of this. That is okay. So we will get started here. So I wanted to, first of all, just check in with everybody and just say, this is kind of the point where we get to about 2 weeks and this is the final push. When we're building habits, that there's a reason. It takes between 20 and 28 days, depending on the habit. And we are coming up on that 20-day mark. We're at day 19. And this is sort of that point where if you can really push through this, then you effectively have solidified that pattern in the neuroreceptors of your brain. So, I know that getting up early is not always a lot of fun. And especially when you're building the habit, I know it's especially not super fun, but we're almost there. And I hope that everybody has started incorporating some daily sunlight as well throughout the day, with, nothing on your skin. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the importance of that today and why we're doing it and why it's a part of this protocol. So the whole reason that I even started this practice, like started researching sunlight. Well, one, my dad has been obsessed with vitamin D for many, many years, like since I was 18 years old. So that's over 20 years now, for those of you who are curious. So my dad has been obsessed with vitamin D for quite some time. And, like every kid, when you're young and your parent is obsessed with something. Also, I should mention my dad is a doctor. You kind of like dismiss it. Like you're kind of like, okay, whatever. So I didn't necessarily dismiss it at the time, but I also didn't really care. I kind of just tucked it away in the back of my brain and I was like, interesting. Fast forward to the pandemic and, I would say, what was that? 2020? Yeah, March of 2020. So fast forward to 2020 and people are starting to talk about, coronavirus. And I distinctly remember going to book club. I was running a book club at the time. And the person that was like co-facilitating with me asked me if I was worried about it. And I was like, I'm not, but I don't know why. And so I started sitting in meditations and checking in and just kind of trying to see what was up. And I kept getting over and over and over that it was important that I walk in the morning as the sun was rising and that I spend time outside with nothing on my skin. This is coming through to me from my guides and meditation. And at the time, I didn't make the correlation with vitamin D and that prescription. it was also clear to me that movement in the morning was important. And so I started incorporating that. And then as I continued to sit in meditation, I was given some other supplements that started coming through as well. But key among all of this was vitamin D through the sun. And it took me some time to start doing research to figure out that the reason that I was hiking, being instructed by my guides to hike early in the morning and also to get sunlight exposure, was because that was the perfect way to build vitamin D in your body. Why is that important? Vitamin D is absolutely amazing at preventing colds and influenza, as well as they suspect COVID. Now, the studies that have been done, because COVID is fairly recent, can only look at correlations between low vitamin D and incidence of infection. And it turns out that there is, in fact, quite a large correlation there. Now, correlation is not causation. I want to be clear to say that. So again, it's too soon to say. But they have done other studies with other infectious diseases and found that people in areas who tend to have lower vitamin D in their blood are also much more at risk. Harvard did a large study about influenza A, and the people who were given vitamin D supplementation were 40% less likely to get influenza. So we're talking pretty significant numbers here with vitamin D. The other thing that's fascinating about vitamin D is that they have shown in laboratories that vitamin D is able to kill cancer cells. They noticed that people who lived in higher and very, very low latitudes, so far away from the equator, had higher incidences of colon cancer specifically, as well as certain other types of cancers. They postulated that this was because of vitamin D deficiency, and have since used vitamin D to treat cancer. Now, they have a really hard time controlling for whether or not it prevents cancer, because people are supplementing with vitamin D unknowingly in a lot of different ways. And if you tell people what you're controlling for, then you ruin the experiment. So it's noted in almost all of these experiments that they had a really hard time now, because vitamin D is so popular, controlling for people not taking vitamin D. So we don't have a super great baseline in some of these tests, but the fact that we know that certain types of cancers are occurring in people who have less vitamin D, and we can cross correlate that to what's happening in the body, especially when we look at other diseases that are autoimmune in nature. So we do know that vitamin D plays a huge role in helping support the body against autoimmune diseases, specifically multiple sclerosis, which is oddly on the rise in both developed and underdeveloped countries. And the best treatment for it, natural treatment and preventative, is vitamin D. So, on top of bone health, on top of eye health, on top of skin health, on top of liver function, all of these things are supported by or driven by vitamin D. We don't really get vitamin D from any other source other than the sun. You can get small amounts of vitamin D, D2 from certain types of mushrooms. You can get a little bit of D3 from like liver, certain types of fish, like cod liver oil, but it's not very large amounts. So again, you can supplement, and supplementation is fine, but we've been found that the increasing the bioavailability of vitamin D in your body really does happen fastest and best through sunlight. There is really no replacement for it. They also know that kids who get the rickets early in life, which is just low vitamin D early in life, it's called rickets, are much more susceptible to a lot of these diseases later on. So again, vitamin D is just showing up more and more and more as something that's important for our health. And with the release of coronavirus, and with so many of the other things that are starting to circulate now as the ice caps melt, and who knows what else is going to happen, I truly believe that having a high concentration of vitamin D to carry you throughout the year into the winter, so that your body is then eating that vitamin D throughout the winter, is really one of the best ways to stay healthy. I started supplementing vitamin D naturally a little bit before the pandemic actually got really hit. I mean, it was late 2019, early 2020. So that I started doing the sunlight protocol. I recently got sick traveling. I think I got the flu, but I also had not been treating my body very well. And recently, it was a couple months ago. Before that, I had not been sick in 3 years. I've never had corona, and I had, in fact, did not get sick at all during that time when my practice was really, really strong with the sunrise. So, I mean, that's anecdotal. Who knows? Like, is that amazing scientific resource? No. But for what it's worth, I know a couple of other people who have some form of sunrise meditation practice, not even for this reason. And they also are two of the only other people I know who have not had coronavirus. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not your mother. I'm not telling you for sure that it will keep you from getting these things, but we do know that it does prevent influenza A at the very least, as well as preventing the occurrence of the common cold. That alone should be enough to want to take it, not to mention all of the other things that it does when it comes to cancer prevention, memory loss. That's another one. They've shown that people who have enough vitamin D later in life in their blood, who are developing enough vitamin D in their blood, tend to have much less lower incidences of memory loss conditions. So I don't think it can be overstated how important it is to make vitamin D in your body through your skin. So this is why we started training our body through our eyes in the morning, that we were going to start exposing our skin to the sun throughout the day so that our body had all of the mechanisms in place. And not just to protect you, but also to let your body know that we were doing this. So I really, really strongly recommend, if you've been doing this practice fairly consistently up until now, and you are not adding in daily sunlight throughout the later parts of the day, please start doing it, because that's where your body actually starts producing vitamin D, because we need the UVB rays, which are not available until after the 30-degree mark on the horizon. So this morning is letting your melatonin, it's doing all of those other hormones. Vitamin D is technically considered a hormone in your body. It's letting all of those other hormones grow. It's measuring, releasing, but it's setting you up for vitamin D production later in the day. So please, please, please get some sunlight. Again, the DMinder app is awesome. It will keep you from getting burns. This is also important that you do both parts of the practice, because if you don't, what they've found is that people who just suddenly go outside in the middle of the day, your skin has a natural reaction where it gets hot. And when your skin gets really hot, it actually stops the production of vitamin D. So it's like a computer. Like when a computer gets hot and the processor stops working, our bodies have a similar mechanism in place. So if we aren't giving our body that awareness of like, hey, this is the program we're going to be running, so it's not prepared with what amount of like storage or cooling or whatever it needs, then the body tends to overheat and we don't produce vitamin D. So all of these systems go together for a reason. So in case anybody on here was not convinced about the importance of getting natural vitamin D through sunlight, this is it. Like, so important. So please, please, please start increasing your vitamin D. We're a few days away from the solstice, which means that we have the most sunlight available for the longest amount of time. And you want to be building that up from now through August. For those of you who don't live in a very sunny place like me, you know, especially if you're up far north, you really, really, really want to be building that natural vitamin D in your body now, so that you have it to get you through the darker days that are coming. And that is how your body stays healthy through the winter. Also consider supplementation. I would consider supplementation if I lived someplace where I couldn't get vitamin D year round. So that's the education for today. I know that it's hard to absorb information in the morning sometimes, and I know that I repeat information sometimes. That's all intentional. I want you all to start to absorb this information. The more that you understand it, actually, Carson's on this call and he was making this point and I really loved it. You know, he was talking about how when you know something and you start to teach it, it integrates in your brain a different way. So the more that you start to hear this, the more that you can put it out there, the more you can talk about it, you can think about it, the more that you're going to integrate this knowledge, and it's going to be easier to make it a part of your life. And I truly wouldn't be teaching this practice like getting up and signing on every single morning if I didn't believe that this was something that could change people's lives. So there's my rant on getting your sunlight today and for the rest of the summer, if possible. Again, please be cautious, use common sense. And for the love of everything holy, please do not go outside with a ton of oils and lotions and things on your skin, because again, we are now seeing, and this is why a lot of those sunscreens were recalled, is that a lot of these chemicals that are being added to skincare products are what is causing reactions that are then causing skin cancers. So, please make sure that you are taking that stuff off of your skin before you go out in the sun. Aloe is the only thing that's been shown to be safe, is aloe so far that I'm aware of. Again, I am preparing some information about oils that we can talk about at some point. If anybody's curious, maybe we'll talk about that on the Q&A. But yeah, okay. So let's just take a second here to just appreciate our beautiful sunrise this morning. I know everybody's at a slightly different place and time, and that's okay. So we're still going to just find that eastern horizon. We're going to take just a few minutes here together to start our Monday. Starting your Monday with juicy brain goodness, waking that brain up, understanding that brain and body connection. There is nothing more powerful than that. And just coming into the heart space. So with the eyes on the eastern horizon, I want you to start to think about all of the processes that the sun initiates for us. The growth of our food, which then feeds our food. The way that it triggers all of these responses for us, that it keeps us warm, that it creates a habitable environment. Everything that the sun does just on the most basic level to support life here on Earth. We would not be here without the sun. And yet most of us go through our day without ever even considering that, without ever thinking about how grateful we should be to be on this amazing planet with this perfect star, creating the absolute perfect environment for us to sustain life. And so just, if we can, just taking a second to try to dial into that for a second. And even if you can't quite feel it in your heart, just think it in your brain. Just start there. How amazing it is that this is happening. And I don't care what you believe about how the world was created. If you believe that God created all of these things and that's how we have this set up, that's great. Like, we shouldn't be any less grateful. If you think it's science, again, we shouldn't be any less grateful, right? So this is one thing where I think we should all be united. Like, doesn't matter what you believe about how we got here. The reality is that these things have to be exactly perfect in order for us to survive. And the sun is the key player in all of that. And there is never anything wrong with gratitude, as far as I'm aware, in any religion or philosophy of the entire world. And I've studied quite a bit of them. So finding gratitude for that sun right now, deep in your heart, and just reflecting on that. Maybe doing a little eye exercises. You can use your hands, look at the palm, look through the palm. Give those eyes a chance to wake up. Good. And for those of you who are trying to stay awake for the rest of the day, something I forgot to mention, do not go back into a dark house. When you get inside the house, even if it's just for the next 30 minutes, turn all the lights on. That blue light and those lights is going to help keep your brain wide awake. It's going to signal to your brain and body that it's time to stay awake. If you go back into a dark house, you're going to want to fall asleep again. So that's another helpful clue. Just doing some eye stretches, trying to sit in that gratitude. Awesome. Perfect. You guys are awesome. Stay out, enjoy the sunlight as much as you can. They've shown that people who are outside for on average 2 hours of the day tend to be healthier by every metric, including eye health, immune health, cancer reduction and prevention, diabetes, you name it. So I know it's not possible for all of us to be outside for 2 hours a day, but if you have another 5 to 10 minutes out here where you can just enjoy being outside right now, please take that, and I will see you all tomorrow morning.